Good afternoon. My name is Thayden Gosson, and I am here with a very special guest, Norman Belanger. Thank you for being here, Norm.
Thank you for having me, Thayden.
Of course. We're very happy that you chose this part to be a part of this exciting project. What branch of the military were you in, Norm?
I was in the United States Navy, and I was in the Naval Reserves, which means you do 1 year of reserve training, 2 years active duty, and then 3 more years of reserve training.
That's a lot of time.
It's quite a bit of time. It was interesting, and it was fun, for the most part.
Yeah, I bet. Why did you choose that branch?
Well, I chose that branch. My father was a Marine, and my father went to war in World War II. He was in Saipan, and while he was there, he stepped on a landmine, and he did some damage to his leg. His leg was swollen for the rest of his life. And based on that, I probably didn't want to go into the Marines and the Army for that reason, because they were they were first responders to everything on the battlefield.
Right.
So I chose the Navy, and I liked the water, and I figured it'd be nice to be on the ship. And the other reason I chose the Navy was that back after I graduated from high school in 1967, I went to Somerset High School, and I chose the Navy because back then we had a lottery for the draft system. And they picked your date of birth out of a hat, a lottery, and my lottery number was I think it was 20, which meant that I was going to be being drafted into the Army or the Marines,
Yeah.
and I'd be going into the Vietnam War. So instead of doing that, I chose to go in the Navy, and I knew I'd most likely be on a ship.
Mm-hmm.
And I think I made the right choice.
Do you remember how many crewmates you had on your ship?
Yes, there were 237 crew members on my ship.
Wow.
That means there was probably about maybe 210 that were enlisted men, and there were probably 27 or so that were commissioned officers, and I was an enlisted person.
Do you have any close friends that were on the same?
On the same ship with me? No. However, I did have a very close friend who was in the National Guard out of Fall River, and the battery that he was in, the National Guard battery, got activated, and unfortunately he had to go to Vietnam. And when he came back from Vietnam, I was stunned, because I was with him the day he came back from Vietnam, came back to Somerset, and we had a party for him. And that night I recall him going to sleep on top of a wooden tabletop like this, and sleeping on a tabletop. And I said, "Larry, why are you sleeping on a tabletop?" He said, "Because that was what we were used to doing in the military on active duty in Vietnam. There wasn't a comfortable bed with a mattress there for you." And then the other thing that sticks out in my mind, the following day, I took him, it was in the fall, autumn time, I took him to Fall River in my car to get some clothes, so we'd have some clothes after coming back from the service, And the leaves were falling off the tree. And I noticed he's sitting in the front, and he's like ducking in the windshield as the leaves were hitting the windshield. I said, "Larry, you all right?" He said, "When I see that," he said, "it reminds me of shrapnel coming in my direction."
Yeah.
So that kind of convinced me that I made the right choice by going in the Navy a little bit,
Mm-hmm.
And like I had mentioned too, my father was injured in the service in the Marines, so I decided to go with the Navy.
Now, speaking of your father, what were your parents' thoughts and reactions to you being in the Navy?
Well, my father he was encouraged that I was going in the Navy. As a matter of fact, after I got out of high school, I did a lot of construction work with him, carpentry work. And, he taught me the trade a little bit. So when I did go in the Navy, they asked me what I wanted to do. I said, well, I'd like to do some maybe welding or carpentry work. I was pretty good at that, and I enjoyed that trade. So they said, okay. They sent me to a school in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. It was called Hull Technician School. I was a damage controlman. And going to that school, my job on the ship was that I do carpentry work. I did some firefighting work too. I was a firefighter. And one of my other jobs was, let's say if the ship was hit by a torpedo and there was a hole in the side of the ship, it was my responsibility, my job to get, it's called a plug. It's a large wooden plug. And you'd actually bang that into the side of the ship to
Wow.
prevent the water from coming in.
I never knew that.
Yeah, it was an interesting job. And when you weren't doing that at nighttime, we'd have to take what they call readings down in the boiler room. And you go down there and you put a long stick inside of a tank, make sure there was no flooding going on anywhere. But the boiler room was very loud, and I can still remember the ringing noise in my ears from it.
I assume you weren't the only welder or fixer on the ship.
No, I wasn't. There were a number. There were probably maybe 5 or 6 other welders, and it was interesting. But back then, when I was on active duty, they didn't really give you proper face mask to wear for the welding or hearing protection, and so it was a difficult job. I didn't do that much welding. I did mostly a lot of carpentry work. It was interesting.
Hard work.
It was hard work, and I enjoyed it, and it kept me busy.
When did you serve?
I served from active duty from July of 1970 to July of 1972. And that was during the Vietnam era. And like I said, a lot of my friends went to Vietnam, and some of them didn't return.
I'm sorry for your loss.
Yeah, thank you for saying that. But, I enjoyed what I did.
That's good. Where did you serve?
Okay, I was actually on a destroyer escort called the USS Patterson. It was out of Newport, Rhode Island, not far away. The ship itself was, I think, 438 feet long. And like I said, we had about 237 crew members. And it was a destroyer escort. We had, big guns on the deck and everything. And from Newport, I did a nice domestic cruise. I went down to Florida. We went to New Orleans. And I did a North Atlantic cruise, which was kind of interesting. We were heading up to St. John's, Newfoundland, and Halifax, Nova Scotia. And when you're in the North Atlantic, the seas are so rough. I was sleeping on the 3rd bunk up, so I was way up top. The seas are so rough that we had to strap ourselves into the bunk.
Wow.
So that the turbulence in the water didn't knock you out of your bunk.
Yeah.
And, you'd be walking along the hallways. The walls weren't called walls, they were called bulkheads. And when you'd walk in the North Atlantic in a rough sea, you'd be bouncing off the walls with your hands. And so it was interesting, that's for sure.
I bet a lot of accidents could have happened.
A lot of action. And, then I went on to, I went to Kiel, Germany, which was interesting. And I went to Scandinavian countries. I went to Norway. I went to Liverpool, England. That's where the Beatles started out, in Liverpool, England. And I remember pulling up to the dock and being advised that we could take a few hours off and go to this place called the Cavern. That's where the Beatles got their start. So I remember going there.
Great band.
It was a great band. And then went up, like I said, to Norway. And we went to 3 different ports in Norway. I think we started out in Oslo, Norway. Then the ship went to Sandefjord, Norway, and then Bergen, Norway. And our commanding officer said, okay, I'm going to allow a couple of people to take a few days off if you'd like, and you could meet us at the next port. So myself and one of my other shipmates decided to take time off, and we hitchhiked to the next port, And they told us that an easy way to get a ride is if you had a small picture of the U.S. flag and you held that up when you were hitchhiking, and people would pick you up and give you a ride, because they'd be curious.
Yeah.
And so that was interesting. And as you know, in Norway, they have fjords, large rocks, huge rocks. And I remember sleeping for a couple of nights on those rocks. And back then, there were 22 hours of daylight at the time of the year I was there. So there was only 2 hours of nighttime. So we were sleeping when it was daylight out.
Wow.
But it was all interesting. And then I met the ship at one of the other ports in Norway.
Yeah.
So that was interesting.
So you told me about being a firefighter and not just being in the Navy. Is there any other thing you did?
I did. Because the Navy the military instills a lot of discipline in you. You know, you honor your superior officers, and you become very disciplined. I chose to become a police officer afterwards, and I got all my training as a first responder, and I worked locally in Somerset, Mass, and I did 30 years as a policeman there, and they were 30 great years. I really helped a lot of people. I have a lot of friends there, and I feel very proud and distinguished to be able to say I served my community like that. And it was kind of a spin-off of being in the military to a certain degree. You know, being a policeman, it's very regimentated, and you do things a certain way. You abide by the law as you do when you're in the military.
Right.
And it makes you a better person. I really enjoyed it.
Is there a story or stories you would like to talk about?
Like I said, I recall helping a lot of people. Well, I got a kind of a funny story. I remember in Somerset, there was a large facility. It was called the Car Palace. It's no longer there now. I think it houses a church there now. But back 30 years ago, we used to have a thing called Battle of the Bands, and we'd get people from Brockton, New Bedford, all over the area come in to listen to bands. And they, of course, would hire policemen to make sure everything was under control. And one night, there was a big battle of the bands going on, and I was there. Actually, I was in charge. I had 5 other policemen working with me. And there was also about a half a dozen security guards there. So I chose to be at the stage when the band members came up to the stage to get on. I would make sure that, they were the band members.
Yeah.
I was at the door, and so after one band completed, the next band, one of the members of the next band came up. And I didn't know too much about the bands or who was popular back then, but there was a band out of Boston called the New Kids on the Block, and they're still doing music now. And I can remember them coming to the back door, one of them coming to the back door, and I stopped him. I said, "I'm sorry, this is for band members only." I didn't know they were band members. And he said, "Well, but we're the New Kids on the Block." I said, "I don't care how long you lived in the neighborhood, you still can't come up here." And then I was told that that was the group. So it's kind of funny to live with that. And like I said, I had, I remember just helping a lot of people. And, when you're a first responder, you know a lot about medical things. And, I responded to a lot of serious car accidents, and those weren't pleasant.
Yeah.
I was also the breathalyzer operator, and I used to go to the high school and speak to high school students, and I'd talk about the breathalyzer and how embarrassing it would be if you were caught drunk driving. We have you outside of the car doing field sobriety test, and if you were placed under arrest, it would be expensive because you'd have to bail yourself out and then go to court and so on and so forth. And, I try to discourage anybody from drinking and driving, of course. But I also said, too, the most difficult part of my job, if somebody was driving drunk and they got in an accident and, God forbid, they lost their life.
Right.
A lot of times I'd have to knock on their parents' door at 2 o'clock in the morning and have the parents come downstairs and say, I've got some real bad news for you. And believe me, the most difficult part of the job. So, I just hope people don't drink and drive.
Yeah, I'm sorry I had to go through that.
Yeah. Other than that, I had a very good career.
Well, I noticed you bring a cute friend today.
This is my buddy Joe. He's certified as a service dog, and he's the epitome of a comfort dog, a support dog. He's really a good guy. Sit, Joe. Atta boy. And I take him to Gooseberry Beach or Horseneck Beach. I take him to the Tiverton Dog Park, and everybody loves Joe. He's a golden doodle. He's 5 years old. He sits on the couch at night with my wife and I and watches the Red Sox game or the Patriots game, and he loves it. He's a great guy. Golden doodle.
How long have you had Joe?
I've had him for 4.5 years now. 5 years, I think, yeah. My wife chose him, and she couldn't have picked a better dog. He's a great dog. Always happy. His tail's always wagging. Everybody knows Joe. Huh, buddy? Okay.
Well, thank you for participating in this project, and thank you for your service to our nation, Mr. Norm.
Thank you, Thayden. I appreciate it, buddy.
Of course.
You're a good man.
Thank you. You're a great man.